my internet's going to be rubbish tonight.
Here we are. Good evening. Welcome along to another Blether episode. Great to see YouTube is already alive and kicking with loads of comments coming on. If you're watching from Facebook, please feel free to say hello as well. The most important question we ask you all is what is in your glass, so please let us know. Dave Facker saying, good evening, folks. Great to be back after a difficult 3 weeks. Yeah, David's sending your thoughts. We did raise a wee glass when we heard the news of your dad. So, yeah, we're thinking of you. Let's raise a wee glass for Dave. Pour in. Dave to your dad. Slange. In his glass tonight, we have Finn Thompson Glengarry, the Tokai cask. Dave's Glengarry range is phenomenal.
It's impressive, and I didn't know if the Thompson brothers did a Glengarry Tokai. I know about the.
That's not Thompson brothers. That's Finn Thompson.
Oh, Finn Thompson. Sorry, I was thinking, who was it? Dean's? Mary McDavid. They do a Tokai one, don't they?
They did a Tokai.
I know that one. Yeah. I didn't know this one.
So I wonder if I did. I think I did check because the Murray McDavid's an 11-year-old. Finn Thompson's got a 12-year-old. So I wonder if they're sister casks.
That'd be a fun side-by-side experiment, wouldn't it? Can I just mention, before we went live on air, would you not have just pointed out, like, I've got major volume going on in my hair just now. Like, maybe we'd have just gone and fixed that before you went live.
I thought that's what you went to do. I thought you had it under control. You came back with the same hair as you left with. I'm sorry. So who else have we got watching? We've got Kat does her hair. We've got Ryan. We've got Frank. Hi, P-Ed. How are you? We've got that's Stuart. Good evening. Welcome along. Enjoy the Big Pour. Good evening to you and Rob Smith. He's coming in from a very windy American Midwest. So you might have the wind, Rob, but we've got the snow. We've had God knows how much snow fall on us in the last 2 days. So if you want to see what Scotland's all about, come and visit just now. Ryan's got the Compass Box blended collection, and he's trying a couple. He's got Glasgow Blend, Orchard House, and the Hedonism. Let me know how the Orchard House is, because I've always been tempted by that, but never got round to getting it. Would love to see what's in your glass, to see what it tastes like. In my glass tonight, it's been hitting social media all over the place. Is our little brown dog. Glasgow Distillery Sherry Hogshead. This was going out for like 50 quid. It's an absolute stonker. 55.7. I'm not even sure if that's legal going on minimum pricing, but it's what we done and it's what they put out. I think it's now completely sold out, which means I get to enjoy the tasting bottle. Yeah, but I'll keep you a sample.
Their socials. That would be I absolutely love the photograph he's put up of covers like raining outside the barras and like it's kind of distorted the colours from the big. It's such an awesome photograph. I love everything about that. It's a lot of fun. That's pretty cool.
It's a cool label. Barrow's obviously the music venue in Glasgow. You've been there a few times, I'm sure.
I love going to the Barrowlands. It's the best place to go and see music, and you always see all sorts of things happening as well. It's a lot of fun.
If anyone's watching who's been to Barrows, let us know your favourite Barrowlands story. I'll tell you mine a little bit later on. I need to have another dram or two before that story gets exposed.
I think you have told us the story, or maybe that was a shop night out. I don't know. I think I know that story.
But let's welcome our guest, Ingvar. I always say to our guests before we come on live that it's going to be like a minute or two chat before we bring them on, and I just noticed we've like 4.5 minutes of gibberish. So let's bring Ingvar on and say hello. Good evening, Ingvar. How are you?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Kat.
Hello.
I'm fine. How are you?
We're well. All the better for having you on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here. Again.
Yeah, you're always welcome. You're like I don't know, like your sort of old hat of this. Old hand of this? Old hat? Old hand. What's the
I think
expression?
a dab hand, old hat.
Dab. I just combined two and made a new one.
You did. So
Well,
yeah,
congratulations on the new.
welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kat was just saying, congratulations on the new book.
There's going to be a slight delay with you being so far away, and I think my internet's not great tonight with the snow. I'm hoping it's going to last. So there's going to be like getting the scores from Eurovision tonight. I think we're all going to be talking over each other.
I'm not that far away. I mean, it's just Sweden, and we have some snow here as well, so we're quite similar.
You've probably got more than us, I'd imagine, by now. I guess you get quite a
Not
lot.
where I'm living, but I just told Mike that in the northern parts of Sweden, where I have some friends, they just within 24 hours they got 50 centimeters of snow.
Wow.
So yeah, it's starting now. It's starting now. Winter is coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It starts to put people in a Christmas mood, though, doesn't it? When the snow comes, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, it's that time of year. We really need to think about."
Yeah, but honestly, that's the only way you can cope with the bloody snow. Is okay, we're getting closer to Christmas. Thank God.
Yeah, there's a happy day at the end of all this nonsense.
Exactly. Yeah.
And guys, if you're looking for that ideal Christmas present, look no further than this guy here. You don't have to wait till Christmas if you want to buy it sooner. Please do. Once again, Ingvar, it's an absolute stonking book.
Thank you.
It's got so much information. And how long is that you've been going with the book now?
20 years.
20 years. This is 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It says in very small letters on the cover, actually.
Yeah, on the glass.
I didn't want to boast about it, but yeah, it's 20 years. My God.
I would be boasting about that. I'm chuffed when we get to like our first year as the shop. I took out a bottle to celebrate. That was 1 year. you should be absolutely singing that from the rooftops.
That's an amazing achievement. How many more years do we have to go? Well, let's celebrate the next 20 years of distilleries. We could have them on the moon by then. It could all be, you could do like a special space edition of distilleries in the next 20 years. You must have seen a fair amount of changes from when you first started in 2005 to like where we are now.
Yeah, Kat, you're absolutely right. And I was thinking about it just the other day that probably 2005, when I did the first edition, probably was the absolutely best year to start doing the yearbook, because you remember at that time we had, for 15 years, we had 2 new distilleries in Scotland, Kinimby and Arran. And then Killoman came about in 2005, and that went just a couple of weeks later. And after that, I think it's around 56 new Scottish distilleries. So that was, of course, it was pure luck that I chose 2005. But if I had started doing a yearbook 15 years earlier, nothing happened. It just continued. So it's so bloody boring to make a yearbook. But 2005, that was the best moment, I think.
Yeah. What's been the biggest advance that you've seen in terms of numbers? Do you think it's more distilleries, or is it more independent bottlers, or maybe world whiskies? What's been the biggest surprise?
I think all of it. I mean, I just mentioned all of the new distilleries in Scotland, but absolutely independent bottlers. We've seen so many of them coming about, and absolutely world distilleries. I think in the first book I had 4 or 5 from Australia. There are around 160 now. Mm-hmm. I didn't have China. We have 26 in China now. Japan has been growing, even though that was at that time one of the big 5. If we say Scotland, Ireland, Canada, USA, and of course Japan, because they've been doing whiskey for more than a century now. Yeah. But absolutely world distilleries. We have Taiwan, India, the States, probably 300 distilleries making malt whiskey now. And I think the first one was back in late 1990s. So It's been absolutely incredible. Absolutely.
Which country do you think is emerging as the sort of the country to watch for, like, consistent, good kind of whiskey coming out, or interesting whiskies?
Oh, it's hard to single out one, but my hope is that we will see more of Australian whiskies in our part of the world. I mean, it's mostly Starward that we see all over the world. We like to see more of Sullivan's Cove and of course, and all the other new distillers, Archie Rose and lots of others. But they are so right now focused on the home market because most of them have quite low production volumes and they're trying to saturate their own market. I really hope we see lots more from Australia in the UK, in Sweden, in Europe. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Australia is such a big market on its own anyway, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
We always think, when I always think of Australia, you think of an island, and you think islands are normally quite small, but it's absolutely massive, isn't it?
I mean, it takes 6 hours to just fly across the country.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Do you know what's funny about the Starward distillery? It first came on my radar like maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, because somebody that lives next to Glengarry Distillery, who is a regular at the shop, Mike, Alan, it's either his daughter or his son lives out in Australia, and he'd gone out to see them, and they'd gone to Starward Distillery. And the guide had said, we're using these amazing casks that come all the way from the Highlands in Scotland from a distillery you'll never have heard of. It's called Glengarrick up in the Highlands in Scotland. And Alan Brenner is like, well, firstly, it's pronounced Glengarry. And secondly, I know it fine because I live next door. I thought that's such a crazy story.
Amazing.
I don't even know how they'd got a hold of one of our casks, but yeah, fantastic. I'd love to get
how big. How big the industry gets, it's still very small, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely. What you're saying, Kat, now is a beautiful example of all the collaboration that you have between distillers around the world. And there's been a lot going on between Australia and Scotland. We have some things going on between Sweden and Scotland as well, exchanging casks. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. That's the absolute sentiment of the whiskey business. Whether you're one of the distilleries working on Islay, we've all heard the stories about this thing broke down in our distillery at Lagavulin, and I can just call up Bowmore and they will help me because that's an island.
Yeah,
it's not just restricted to an island. I mean the whole industry. There's a lot of camaraderie going on there. At least if you're thinking about the production, about the distiller manager, maybe not so much between marketing departments and sales departments, because when we get to that level, there's competition. We know that.
Does that make the sort of compiling and collaboration of your work easier? The fact that distilleries are so open and sort of willing to share, as you were saying? Because I know from my perspective, and I don't know if you operate like this all the time, but I got through a sort of email that said, Ingvar wants up-to-date information. Can you provide? I was like, oh, is this how he does it? Because like obviously I've moved into a new role where I was like getting access to these emails. I thought, I wonder if he just fires out like an email at the start of the year to all his contacts, distilleries, and we just confirm back, yeah, nothing much has changed, or this has changed, and then you're kind of bringing it all together. Talk us through the process and like, how easy it is to get distilleries to open up like that.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the various companies. I mean, let's spill the beans. If I look at Diageo, for instance, I have a great communication with each and every distiller manager. So I can send them emails and ask about the production and the changes from last year. Not so much when it comes to Chivas. At Chivas, I have to go through the marketing department and get some kind of blessing from them if I should ask questions. It all depends on the different distilleries. And thing is, and I noticed this very much when I told Mike just before you came on, Kat, I'd just been traveling in Scotland for 10 days. Usually I go back 3-4 times a year, do a week or 10 days visiting distilleries, revisiting a lot of the distilleries, asking for things that have changed in the last year. And especially this year, it was a lot of doom and gloom in the industry right now. We've all seen the figures. Sales are going down for most companies. So I noticed that when I had a walk around with a distillery manager, certain distillery, usually they would say, yes, I know the capacity is 6 million liters. Next year we'll be doing so and so many mashes per week, which means we're going around 5 million liters. This time they were more reluctant to actually reveal how much they were producing. So I got the sense that they had some words from above that don't be too blunt when you talk to journalists about what we're actually producing, because at the moment that is quite sensitive. Some of the people I met were more outspoken, but on beforehand they said, "Okay, Ingvar, this is off the record. We honestly don't want to see it in the book." And I wouldn't have been where I am now, preparing for the 21st yearbook, if I couldn't make that balance between getting some information that I don't print. Yeah. And at the same time asking for information that I do want to get out to the whiskey enthusiasts for whom I'm writing the book. But it is a balance. It's a tightrope balance sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So do you think are companies more willing to give you information when it's very positive and things are going well and they're quite happy to say, look, we're in a boom and this is up from last year, as opposed to saying, oh, well, we've had to cut back, because that might give a poorer public image, because these guys have got shareholders and things like that to look out for.
Yeah. As in every industry, they would like to share news when it's positive. I think it's a big difference between me speaking with 5-6 big companies and if I'm going to meet some smaller distilleries. They are very open about anything that has happened, open about the problems they are seeing for the next year or so. And so, I mean, just as you said, Mike, if they have shareholders, they wouldn't share news with me, one journalist from Sweden writing a yearbook that would in some way overthrow the trust from the stockholders. So of course not. I mean, they're careful about that, for sure.
Absolutely. So if you can remember 20 years ago, it's probably a little bit longer than that the idea first came into your head about writing a book about the distilleries. And what was that inspiration? Where did it all start for you to say, right, I'm going to do this? And was it always going to be an annual thing, or was it a one-off?
Well, it was going to be an annual thing. If we start from the beginning, my interest in whiskey started, I can tell you exactly, first week of July 1980.
Wow.
Of course, I was going to say enjoyed whiskey before. I probably didn't enjoy it. Probably in my late teens, I had a Johnny Walker Red Label or whatever. It wasn't for the enjoyment, to be honest. Don't want to bash Johnny Walker. I always had Johnny Walker Black in my cabinet. And at that time, a friend of mine and I, we traveled to London, spent a week there, and then decided to take the train up to Inverness. We had heard something about whiskey trade. We didn't know anything about it. So we arrived in Inverness, rented a car, and we drove around the whiskey trail and visited, I think it was Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, Strathisle, and Glenfarclas. And I didn't know anything about malt whiskey, but I think that made it so clear to me because I didn't just enjoy the whiskey, I actually met the people. For a lot of whiskey enthusiasts today, they start drinking malt whiskey in the different countries, and then maybe 4 or 5 years later, I have to go to Scotland. I have to visit the distillery. That comes later. For me, it came at the same time. So that was a revelation. So there started my whiskey interest, and I did a lot of different work for the next 20, 25 years. Some of it involved publishing. So when I came to 2004, I wanted to do something different. I was thinking about, okay, my skills in publishing, my interest in whiskey, and I was so tired of trying to keep abreast of what was happening in the whiskey industry. And the only thing that there was a couple of books, marvelous books. I mean, Michael Jackson's book, one by Dave Broom, one by Jim Murray, Charlie MacLean. But I mean, they had been written 2, 3, 4 years earlier, so they were inaccurate. So I started to rely on internet, and I realized that what I saw on one website was repeated on 20 other websites, exactly the same sentence. So I couldn't trust it. I was thinking, why isn't there a yearbook? There were yearbooks about everything. There were yearbooks about weapon, cats, dogs, everything. Nothing about whiskey. So actually, the whole thing started with what I needed. I needed a yearbook, something that turned up every year, going through the industry, going through the distilleries, the bottlings. And I thought that hopefully there would be more whiskey enthusiasts that wanted this book.
Yeah.
And I printed 10,000 copies the first year. I've always been very optimistic. I sold 3,000. So I was sitting there with 7,000 books with a date on it. Realized I couldn't sell that next year. So that was a bit stupid. But anyway, so it took off in the next 2, 3 years. And what I really didn't anticipate, and what happened 4 or 5 years in, was that the industry took an interest in the book. So they started buying it for their brand ambassadors, salespeople, tour guides. And I didn't see that coming. I thought this was a geek book for geeks like me. And anyway, so it's still selling well. It's been 20 years now. I started publishing it on my own. I have my own publishing company. Otherwise, I couldn't have been able to make a living out of it. So, yeah.
It's amazing. It's literally become like a tool or like a sort of training manual for most people that are starting out in the industry, which it must make you feel like really proud, to have created. Not only that, but it's also you've almost creating like an archive. Because obviously, you're compiling this information year after year. It's like a sort of archive of the industry as well. It's a fantastic idea. It's amazing that you're still doing it because it must be so time consuming.
It is time consuming, but I mean, I still love it. And especially what you say, I mean, I've heard people go back, I have all the books in the bookshelf. And I went back to 2014. So you can always go back to the books and see, okay, 10 years earlier, how was the industry? How was that distillery going? Yeah.
It's good. It's like when you were a kid and you collected your favorite annual that came out at Christmas time. So I've literally got them all on my desk at work, and they're with the year and the different coloured spine. And it is, even out of just interest, you flick back to find your favorite distillery, or you can do a bit of comparison. And then I've always got one in my handbag. Like literally, it's like car keys, Ingvar's book. So if I'm going off to do a tasting, we can't always remember all the facts about every distillery, especially if you've got like a lineup last minute. You're like, oh God, like what was the establishment date or who owns them? Hang on a second, let me get my little book out.
I used myself in the same way. I can't remember everything, so I use it exactly the same.
It's so useful like that, though.
We have one in the tasting room at the shop, and it's so handy. Even during the tasting, if somebody asks a question, you're like, well, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I could find out pick up the book, and it's a good little advertising tool for the book as well, because they see it and think, oh, can I get one of them? And it's a nice wee pitch, because as you say, not everyone can remember everything about every distill. There probably is somebody out there. Jeremy Watts probably pretty close. He's watching tonight. But there's probably somebody like that out there who will remember all these facts.
I'm sure there always is.
But I'm not one of them, so I need the book to be close at hand.
I don't think we asked you what was in your glass. Did we do that, Mike?
We didn't.
I have a Man of More, 14-year-old from Mossburn.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, I like Mossburn. They're doing some nice stuff, and what they've done with Torabeg as well is really good.
What are you guys having?
I am just about to pour another Little Brown Dog.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
What about you?
I've had the cold, so I've been feeling rubbish all week, and then it's really cold and snowy outside, and whenever it's cold, I just want something peated, because it's like it warms the insides. So I just went for one of my faves, just nice before I go in. I was raking around in the shelf thinking, what do I want? I thought, that's what I want. So
something nice and classic.
Yeah. It is, just like myself, classic. Nice and classic. So no, it's good. I'm enjoying it. It's making me feel nice and cozy on the inside.
We've got a question from Alan Ingvar. We've talked a lot about how whiskey has grown and kind of things that have happened for the better. But is there anything that you think of has changed for the worse in the 20 years you've been kind of working it?
Apart from the price of whiskey?
Yeah.
No, apart from the price, actually, no. I think the world of whiskey has become so widespread now, not just in terms of where we find distilleries all over the world, but in terms of flavor as well. To be honest, I'm thinking about, for instance, wood finishes. Do you remember 10, 15 years ago, the likes of us, the geeky part of the whiskey consumers, we looked down on wood finishes. We wanted the real stuff. We wanted it matured in the first fill bourbon or second fill PX or Oloroso. We didn't really like it when we always said that, yeah, the only reason you're doing wood finishes is because you have a lousy whiskey and you have to do something to make it sell.
Yeah.
And that was total rubbish, of course. Sometimes that was the truth. But today, I think there's so many new cool wood finishes. I'm thinking especially about stout and ale and different beer finishes, which are absolutely wonderful. The only one of the new ones that I really haven't come to terms with yet is tequila finishes.
Okay.
I've tried a few. I remember last year Diageo came up with special releases. They had a Lagavulin the tequila finish. That wasn't Lagavulin to me. I found it absolutely terrible. But there are lots of great things happening there, and a lot of especially the new distilleries in Scotland, I think when they're going back to the future. I mean, what started with the Thompson brothers, Phil and Simon. I would like to say that actually it started with them in 2008. They were looking for heritage barley. They were looking for floor malted barley, looking for barrel-fired stills, and going back to worm tops and such. And a lot of the new distilleries are doing exactly that. So they are searching for the flavors that we may have lost a couple of decades ago, because many of the whiskies today from the big producers are good, but a bit generic, I think. Okay. So I think it's quite brave of we have Johnny Macmillan and Angus McRae starting up Kite Distillery. We have They want some Torbay, Grasse, Arnamerken, etc. And it's brave in a certain sense because they are working with, for instance, Golden Promise or all these old barleys where they know that they will only get around 300 liters per ton barley instead of what the industry is looking for now, 415, 420 liters. So they are sacrificing efficiency for great flavors. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something for us as consumers to be aware of, because these whiskies, when they appear, some of them have already been released, and we will see lots more in the next decade. They will be quite expensive for obvious reasons, because it's an inefficient way of producing whiskey. So we as enthusiasts and consumers, we have to be prepared, because these guys are making whiskey for us. They are not making whiskey for the general market. So we must be prepared to pay the money to enjoy these really brave, amazing whiskies that they are making.
I think the trend seems to be just now to, drink less but drink better. So potentially, I guess it's going to meet in with that sort of mindset. But of course, like with using these sort of older techniques and things, whiskey's going to take longer to produce and stuff. So it depends if that mindset's still there when this whiskey is being released. But I think it's exciting. I think it's a good sign that we are focusing more on flavour than just whacking out, volume as well. But I think there'll always be that balance, for every high-end expensive whiskey out there, which we need because we've got those people who are in that bracket. We've also got distilleries that are putting out the sort of achievable sort of, it's still good quality, but like Glenmorangie, for example, they always gets a bit of a knock-in, but they put out such good spirit at a really reasonable price because they do it in volume. So it's nice to have these two ends of the spectrum, I guess. It's for the consumer as well, it gives us a bit more choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Glenmorangie and Tamnavulin, for instance, which in just 2 years became the most sold single malt in Sweden. And it's selling really well, I know, in the UK and the rest of the world as well. I had a wee chat with Chad Patterson 2 years ago in London, and I mentioned that, do you know that Tamnavulin, one of your whiskies, is actually the best-selling single malt in Sweden? Oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing. Yeah. And he asked me, why is that, Ingvar? Well, first of all, it's a good whiskey, but to be absolutely honest, it's the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked him, would you rather see Tamnavulin being number one and the cheapest in Sweden, or maybe number 5, 6, and maybe priced at £35 instead of £25?
Yeah.
And he thought about it and said, actually, I would rather see it as number 5 or 6, and maybe a little bit higher in price.
Okay.
But that's obviously coming from the whiskey maker. If we ask the sales division of White Mackay, no, of course, number 1, perfect.
I guess guys like that from the marketing and kind of the White Mackay kind of side, they're quite happy because they're covering a lot of bases with their price market, aren't they? They've got Tamnavulin at kind of the entry level, then they've got Fettercairn, probably sitting in the middle, or Jura probably in between them, Fettercairn, then down more. So they've kind of got, each one is kind of an additional probably £10 a bottle when you go from.
Yeah, they are in a good place, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose when
as
Richard,
long as they remember that.
Yes,
I think there's a drive towards. There's kind of like this drive towards premiumization and sort of high end just now, and I guess it is because that's where the market is just now. But if you're in a position where you've got an entry level dram at like 25 to 30 quid, and then you've got your high end one, you're winning. You've got something for everyone. So I think it's a good place to be. But yeah, and you can't go wrong with Tamnavulin. I think you get them, and I think it's in most of the supermarkets, isn't it? Same with Glenmorangie. I think it's just really accessible, which is fantastic as well.
Absolutely. We've got a question for you, Ingvar, from Rick. He's watching from San Francisco. He slept in this morning because he missed the start of the chat when we went back 20 years. He's got every issue back to 2008.
Wow.
He was wondering well, he's asking if he's missing any. So yes, you're missing 3.
2.
2?
First one was I published it in 2005, and that was
you're kind of a year ahead. Yeah.
He's missing 2. Yeah,
you're missing 2. So Rick, you're missing 2. I'm pretty sure Ingvar will sell you at like 10 times original price.
Actually, I have 1 copy each of them.
1 copy each.
That's it. You, if you're lucky, you could find it. I was told on eBay from time to time. I don't know anything about the price, but
They're quite expensive. What happened to the 7,000 you had left over in your loft? You started.
yeah. I put them in the fire. No, they're gone. They're gone. I should have kept them.
Yeah. But that was somebody else in the shop when he found out that you were coming as a guest. He asked me, he's missing 3, not in a row. He's missing 3 kind of periodically. So he was asking if you knew of anyone who had collections that they were selling, or is it just a case of scouring the auctions and maybe eBaying?
I think so. I still have a few copies left of from 2010 and onwards. I think a few of them 2020, 2021, and 2023 for some peculiar reasons. They are sold out. I don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure you can find it at. Maybe you have some copies left in the shop, Mike. I don't know. Or
we have 1 or 2 of the 23, 24, 25.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's
I
far
haven't
back
got
as
it. I haven't got 25 yet. I'm going to have to come into the shop and get it. But I've not been over to see the shop for a while. Sorry. Work full time. Sorry. I'll need to come and get it. How do you decide on the book? So, like, obviously, it's got a format. You know, you're looking at each distillery, but there's all that extras in there. So it goes from, you know, the cover. Obviously, you reveal what the picture is going to be for the book. And then you've got obviously contributors from whiskey writers, and then often you'll choose a sort of maybe a subject or something to highlight, whether it's lost distilleries or things. Do you set out with like a goal in mind, or do you kind of wait to see what information you've got from collaborators and then kind of bring it together based off of that?
Well, if we look at the first part of the book, the 6 articles, sometimes it's 8, this time it was 6 articles. I tried to get some kind of good mix of topics and a good mix of writers. So this year I asked Johnny McLean hasn't been a part of the book for 2 years. I think he was one of the first writers, and I asked him this year. And if you ask Charlie, you ask him about something with an historical aspect, because I mean he's brilliant when it comes to that. Yeah. So I asked him to compare the whiskey boom we're having right now, compare that, all the new distilleries, compare that to the late 1890s, where we had 20, 30, 40 new distilleries coming about. So I asked him to write something about the golden periods of Scotch, and brilliant article. And of course, you want something really geeky, and that's when I call Ian Wisniewski, because he can write anything about oxidation, about evaporation, about the impact of the casks. And I know the readers absolutely love that. Christiane Sherry, she's been writing now for 3 years, and she's absolutely marvelous writer. So she did a piece about yeast. And then you like to broaden it. There we have 2 very geeky articles. We have 1 historical article. So I asked Mark to write something about the Irish whiskey, the modern Irish whiskey, which I think turned out really, really well. Nick Morgan did a piece about an incident on Islay 100 years ago, which almost turned Islay whiskey into something very completely different what we are used to today and what they were used to at that time. I'm sure I have forgotten one of the articles, but I really like to have a mix of different topics. So when I'm done with that, and the writers are, I usually contact them in February, and I want it sometime in June, July. So when they're working on that, I'm thinking about these mini interviews that I sometimes do. Sometimes it's about interviews with distillery managers or master blenders or whatever. And I realized this year that I had been interviewing people from the industry. So realized, why don't I chat with influencers? Because they are the ones who really look out for us as consumers. So I called up Roy Duff, who is a very good friend of mine, and I said, would you like to do one page, and could you please give me some hints on who else I should chat to, because he knows the whole influencer blogger world, of course. So I ended up with 6 one-page interviews with these people from all over the world, which I think they had some really, really good comments on the whiskey industry, not least from a consumer perspective. And then we have a chapter about the year that was, where I tried to cover on a larger scale what is actually going on in not just the whiskey business or the whiskey industry, but in the spirits industry, the trends that we are seeing. And my God, that chapter could be twice as large as it is today. I really would like to see it grow, because there's so much to take into consideration. And I know people asking me, what are the challenges for Scotch whiskey? Is it bourbon? Is it rum? Is it gin? Or could be, I say, it could be cannabis. It could be that the millennials are not drinking alcohol anymore. Or there's so many different aspects that could be a challenge for the whiskey industry. Absolutely. But at the same time, I've seen over the years that Scotch whiskey, especially, is so resilient when it comes to if you have the inflation that we've been seeing now for the past 18 months. I mean, we saw that during the bank crisis in 2008, 2009. And I don't know about you, but you must have had those thoughts as well. Are we getting closer to a whiskey loch that we had in the early 80s? Will we see closures of distilleries? Will we see, are we overproducing right now? I mean, I heard a lot of rumors going around when I traveled to Scotland now for 10 days. We shouldn't spread them around here, but there's so much. And you've heard it as well, of course.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. I think I would like to think, with the information that the guys who are in that side of the business have, we would do well to avoid another whiskey loch, and falling into that same old trap. I mean, things come in circles. There's no getting away from that inevitability. But personally, I think with the lockdown, with COVID happening, we saw such a spike for that 2 year, 2020, 21, 22. We saw such a massive demand through people drinking at home. They had very little kind of social adventures, so it was kind of stuck in. They were doing Zoom tastings on a Tuesday night, and I thought that saw consumption rise, it saw sales rise, and this, remember, this wasn't just something in the UK. This was global. For me, when we look at our shop figures, we've come down a wee bit steadily over the last 3 years since that peak, but we're still way above what we were in 2019. I think if the industry was to look at that, yes, we're dropping, but we're still way above. And I think it's just a natural reset rather than, it's a short-term decline, but it's more of people just getting back into what we were before. And I wonder if there probably is the decision makers of some are saying, right, let's jump on the bandwagon, like what happened with gin 20 years ago, 15 years ago. We saw gin was huge and so many people started producing gin, and we've seen that kind of ebb away. The difference with whiskey is you can't just jump on the bandwagon. You have to build your distillery and get your spirit into cask and wait for at least 3 years, probably more likely closer to 10. It's not just a whim. It's not. So the guys who are putting their money behind it, they can't all be daft. They must have some kind of confidence long term that they're going to see.
Yeah, I would hope so, at least. I remember when people asked me 5-6 years ago, with all these new distilleries coming up, especially in Scotland, do you see any fears of whiskey loch again? Absolutely not, because in the early 80s, the market was so much smaller. Now we talk about Asia as a huge market. And most of these 54, 56 new distilleries are quite small. I mean, it's between 20,000 and 200,000 liters.
Yeah.
But when I've been asked that question in the recent year, I actually think that we will see some casualties on amongst the new Scottish distilleries, because the ones that started when Coloma did 2005, the ones that opened up in 10 years after that, I mean, they have a brand now. They are in the market. Maybe paid off some of the loans, but some of the newest ones, they didn't calculate with the prices of bourbon casks that we are seeing today when they sought for planning permission 5 years ago. They didn't see the energy prices. They didn't see the prices on barley. They didn't see the interest rates. So I'm afraid that we will probably in the next 5 years see a few, at least, Scottish distilleries that have to close, unless they are being bought by some of the big ones. And I know there are a few that open up with the absolute goal of cashing in 5 years from now. Hopefully with Distill Ventures or some other companies taking over the distillery, or at least buying into them. And we saw that with Cardrona, and I'm sure when they started 6-7 years ago, probably it wasn't their intention to sell off that quickly, but Ingvar House bought into them a year ago, and I congratulate them. I mean, it's fantastic to build a strong brand in such a short time, and then have one of the big guys coming in, and you feel more secure. Maybe you're still working in the company, but you can do it with some more relief. You don't have the constant pressure of financing your venture. So
yeah. It's interesting to try and forecast. I guess it's almost impossible to think. Nobody saw the pandemic coming in. Kind of, Brexit has had a huge impact that nobody really saw coming. Ukraine and everything. There's always these kind of left field impacts that either directly or indirectly affect habits, costs, economy. And I do wonder if some of these distilleries, the independents, the new starts, guys like Arndemarken, Rasse, Lindors, who have maybe production capability behind them, will end up selling to blenders. I know it's not their remit at the moment, but it might be that they say, well, we need an extra cash flow, so we'll sell to blenders, and that might be a way of keeping them going.
Could be, absolutely. And I mean, some of these new distilleries have more money behind them than others. I don't see any reason why the likes of you mentioned Arndemark and I think Adelphi, that's a solid business, and same with Rasse and I mean, they are building in Macquahanish now, but there are a few others that are relying on producing gin, which actually isn't that good anymore. I mean, the gin boom, honestly, it's gone, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
You've got the other side of it as well. Whiskey tourism's obviously coming back, tailed off quite a bit during the pandemic, but I think this year we're definitely seeing numbers rising again, which is fantastic. So I mean, maybe liquid's not being sold to the volume it has been at this point in time, but like, at least we do ever have that other side of the coin, so to speak, of, we're still getting the people coming over for the sole purpose of at least ticking off a distillery and buying that token bottle to take home. Okay, it's maybe one bottle, but it starts that maybe association with a brand and with a love of whiskey. So there's hope. There's always hope. I'm always looking for the glass half full, especially when it comes to whiskey and my job.
You're so right. I mean, there's absolutely hope. So if I fear that there will be a few distilleries maybe closing of all these new ones, I mean, that's not disaster. Of course, it is for them, but we have to remember the Scotch whisky business has been there so many times, and it's bounced back. Especially, I remember when on social media they were writing about Ardbeg going from 7 days to 5 days. I think that news broke 2-3 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, and there was a lot of chat about it. Of course, it was Ardbeg, so many enthusiasts, and they was, how is it going now? And Ardbeg, they are in big problems. I wouldn't say that. I mean, distilleries historically have been going from 7 to 5 days on and off for the past 3, 4, 5 decades.
Yeah.
And I remember Lagavulin, they were more or less, I think they produced 2 days in a week in the 90s. And that's why all of a sudden we couldn't find a 16-year-old Lagavulin for 5, 6, 7 years. And now it's back here again. So we shouldn't absolutely catch it right. We should be optimistic. I would absolutely say it's half full.
Yeah, when we're consumer driven, you're exactly right. It was only about 5 years ago that most of us were doing like a mix of 5-day weeks, 7-day weeks sometimes, and then tailing off again. It's just kind of repetition, and it kind of harks back to the original days of distillation when it was a farm-based thing, and you'd have your busy spells and your quiet spells. So the liquid's there, liquid's maturing. It's just that it's maybe not being pumped out in the same volume that we've been used to when people's affluency was a little bit different, but yeah, it's whenever something changes, you're going to have the people that accept it for what it is, and you're going to have the people that are going to turn it into something really negative and put it all over Facebook. So I think as long as you look for the facts and maybe fact check, if you see something, maybe just check it before you share it with everybody.
Absolutely.
The cynic in me thinks, if you send out a rumor that something's going to stop or something's going to be very limited, then panic buying ensues and you get rid of that batch pretty quickly. It might be
quick, guys, buy up the Glengarry before it runs out.
Clever marketing.
Quick.
Actually, I have one good example of it. I'm sure you saw it, that Mackmyra here in Sweden, they went bankrupt in I think it was August or September. And when that decision was made, people here in Sweden, they absolutely, they bought every Mackmyra bottle they could find at the Swedish monopoly, Systembolaget, probably hoping that they would make great bargains and they could sell that Mackmyra bottle a year later for any kind of money, which was absolutely absurd, of course, because 2 months later, which wasn't surprising. Mackmyra has a great distillery. It's a well-known brand, the first Swedish whiskey, starting already in 1999. So 2 months later, the former owner bought back the company with some foreign money, and they're producing again. So actually, I'm laughing at these imbeciles. No, but if there's one thing I really don't like in the whiskey business is trying to be careful now, because there will always be, and I'm sure there are a few here tonight. I mean, collecting whiskey and investing in whiskey. That's not for me. I will never write about it. I will never let any writer do an article about investing in casks or building up a collection or making money out of whiskey. To me, whiskey is a very social thing, and it should be open. It should be shared with friends. So obviously, these people who bought all these Macmillan bottles thought they were going to buy them and sell them off at eBay or at an auction or whatever to make money. And I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah. I guess if you can't, it's easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? It's you see something, you think, hey, here's a easy, quick, and at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, you still got a bottle of whiskey. It's not like like a Bitcoin or something like that, or something mythical. What was that? Pictures you could buy online.
NFT.
Yeah, these kind of things. At least whiskey is something real, most of the time, unless you're buying a cask that maybe doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But if you've got a bottle, you've gone into your retailer, you've bought it physically in your hand, and it's on your shelf. If it doesn't get you that money back, then crack it open and get it in a glass. It's always the end game, isn't it?
I don't know about you two, but have your interest in whiskey changed over the past decade? I feel for me at least. I mean, I to be honest, I care less about what I have in the glass than the people I'm enjoying it with and the situation I'm in. I don't chase the latest bottlings. I hate this fear of missing out. Oh, there are just 200 Springbank 10-year-olds coming to Sweden. I really need to buy one of those. And people are so depressed because, 200, there are probably 20,000 Springbank fans in Sweden. So obviously, most of them will be disappointed. Instead of thinking, there are so many other great whiskies out there. So instead of this FOMO, fear of missing out, just direct your attention to another brand. So
I think this year, I think I've noticed is this need to collect whiskey. Is this like, this is how I'm going to make money. And I think there's so much press out there about it. People get these leaflets to their door constantly about whiskey investment. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So, people who are looking to make that step into whiskey collecting and things, it can be very confusing because a lot of big names that are putting out, like this year has seen some massive releases. It's this chase for the oldest whiskey, the most elaborate bottle design, the most elaborate decanter. A lot of them are beautiful. They're pieces of artwork, but they're maybe not very forthcoming about what the liquid is. I'm not going to name a name, but there was one distillery that released a very old whiskey and an non-age statement next to it, and it was very confusing about which was which. The price made it a little bit obvious, but the marketing didn't particularly make it obvious. So it's like it's a minefield out there. It's and I feel sorry for people who are getting sucked into it a little bit and not sure what the next step is. And I couldn't stand the stress of that. It's just I like whiskey. I like my way of buying whiskey is I like meeting people on here and like kind of finding out about what they do, what they produce. Whether it's an indie, whether it's a blender, and then I just want to try it because we've chatted about it and enjoy it because I like the story. That's my view on it anyway.
I think certainly in general in the shop we've seen that FOMO dying down a little bit. And certainly with certain things there's exceptions. Springbank's an exception, Daft Mill's an exception. Anything kind of inaugural, so Ardnahoe, when the Ardnamurchan 10 came out, that people were desperate to get hands on these kind of guys. But things like Glenallachie wood releases that used to fly, the 10-year-old cask strength used to overnight sell out. Loch Gorm from Kilhoman, these guys, and one's a price issue. One is people just can't afford to collect absolutely every new release that's ever going to come out. And as you say, people are more inclined to sit back and say, right, if I miss out on this one, there's always going to be something else I can get.
Right.
And I think that's a great attitude to have, rather than chasing down that one bottle. Maybe different if you've bought, say for example, Glenallachie batch 10. If you've got number 1 to 9 and you miss out on batch 10, you can see you've been annoyed, and you maybe pay a little bit extra to get that to complete the collection or to keep it going. But for these one-off releases, do you really want to be paying 2-3 times sometimes the RRP just to see you put that bottle?
And Mike, it's the same with the yearbook. If you miss one, there will be another one next year.
Don't tell people that, Ingvar. This is the last one, guys. Buy it quickly. It's the last.
I know, I couldn't be done with that stress. That's why I can't start a collection, because, you either have to have it all or not have it. I can't be bothered with that stress in my life. So, no, I'm just not.
Kat, the only full collection I have in the shop, in my own personal collection, is the Renaissance from Glengarry. It's the only.
Yay.
I mean, it's only 4 bottles, but it's a complete set, and I'm pretty sure that's the only complete set.
I don't even have that. I meant to buy. Well, the 15 was sold out before I started, and then I meant to buy one of the last 18s, and then I think I was on holiday, and it sold out while I was off. So I'm like, oh well. But then what would I do with it? Like, I don't know. I'd rather just buy the 16 and drink it because I like it. I mean,
well, I opened my 17 and then realised it was a signed bottle by Ron Welsh. So,
oh well, it's okay. Just buy some more 17 and put it in.
Yeah. Would you seal it for me if I took it up to the?
I'll reseal it.
I remember we had a guy in Sweden who used to be a Benria collector, and I know he started before Bill Walker took over, and he bought everything, and he had probably 150 bottlings of Benria. And then Billy took over, and every year there were 25 new ones coming out, and very, very special ones for select markets. There was one for Kazakhstan. There was one. And this guy is a Swedish guy. He tried to keep up to pace and buy everything, but he just gave in, and he did one grand Benriach tasting over 3 days with 160 different Benriachs. And then he stopped collecting because, I mean, what we saw at that time were Bruichladdich and Benria, I think they had 20-25 new releases every year. And the consumer got absolutely confused. I mean, we really don't need that.
No.
What we do need, what we do need, we need, and I had this chat with a distiller at the Whiskey Show in London a couple of months ago from an Edinburgh distillery. It was Holyrood. Now, I like the guys there, but the thing is, I discussed with him and I said, okay, you have all these quirky bottlings and different kinds of yeast, and it's quite cool. Some of them good, some are not. You're a young distillery. When will we see a core range? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure we will see that, he said. Right, I said, okay. It's my opinion that every distillery absolutely, sooner or later needs a core range. 2-3 core bottlings, and then you can do all kind of limited releases, experiments, whatever. And I said, I don't think we'll be doing that. So hopefully they're doing the right thing, but I'm convinced that every distillery needs a small core range.
Yeah.
And then you can do other stuff. But we'll see about Holyrood. What do you guys think about Holyrood?
I thought it was fun that they were experimenting with things like yeast and fermentation. It's not a whiskey that I've actually had, I don't think, because was their inaugural release not quite expensive? You had it in the shop, Mike. It sold out pretty quick.
Yeah, the arrival was about £45. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't that one. Oh, no, Art and Ho. I'm thinking of it. It was quite expensive. Their inaugural release. I didn't buy that. Yeah. But. No, it's not one I've played around with. I like the concept of it, but it's not a whiskey I've tried much of because, yeah, it sold out pretty quick before I could get hold of it. It's a cool bottle.
Yeah, that well. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you, Kat. I mean, I like what they're doing. I like they're passionate, they're experimental. But the only thing I would love to see them be around in 10, 15, 20 years from now. And I think to be around in 10 years from now, they really need to have something for that you can go back to, 2 or 3 core bottlings, and then you can do all these lovely sometimes experiments that they're doing. I mean, it's important that you have distillers like Hollerud, like Thomson Brothers, and we talk about Kite and all these. You need to challenge the industry by doing something special, but you also need to think of your survival.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a core range is a really good way of building that kind of like relationship, if you like. You know, once you've tried that sort of initial bottling, you understand where they're coming from, you understand the house character, you know that you like it. You're more inclined to start experimenting and maybe going up the sort of price ladder with a distillery, you know, if you know that that root product is what you like. So yeah, I do think there's value in that point, actually.
Yeah. You need to trust, you need to kind of Alan Smith on YouTube, he just said he agrees with the Ingvar. Hollerud is his closest distillery. Finding the releases hit and miss, so he's less likely to just buy a bottle unless he had the chance to try it. And I guess that's what a core range does, isn't it? It builds that trust with a brand, with a distillery, that you're going to enjoy the flavour. And from that, special releases come. It shouldn't be the other way around, where there's a special release and then the next one is completely different. It's like, where's the direction going? I did a tour of Hollerud as part of the Whiskey Ambassador Advanced course, and it was a fascinating place to go to, because a lot of their distillers are just out of Heriot Watt, and they go in and they're still at that playful stage. So doing the tour, and a lot of kind of whiskey geeks at the course, given it's a whiskey course, and asking the normal questions. What's the fermentation time? What kind of yeasts are you doing? What's your cut points for the heart? And the guy doing the tour was a distiller. I forget his name, but he was just like, well, we don't really kind of have one. We just kind of do it for what the distiller on the day kind of thinks it should be. And you can see some of the guys. How does that work? How can we write it down. With that cask we know was X fermentation, X yeast, and Y cut points, so they know what that's going to create in the future. But they're still at that stage, I suppose a lot of distilleries are. They're still finding their feet, and they're finding what works.
Yeah, absolutely. I realize. I mean, for a control freak coming in there, so your fermentation is anything from 48 hours to 400 hours. Anything from 80 down to 56. I mean, I really love that. They're stretching the boundaries completely.
I think that encourages, other distilleries to do it as well. If somebody's very open about the fact that they're, because some distilleries are we all experiment, but some distilleries flat out, they stick to the brand story of we've been doing it like this for generations, and they're not very open about changes or things that they're experimenting with, which is fine, because I do understand brand protection. But it's when you see these kind of young distilleries quite openly saying, we're going to do a really, really long fermentation, and this is what it's like, and we're going to take in heritage grain. It kind of makes it more acceptable to play around with these things and be open about it. So it encourages more kind of innovation as well. So it is cool that they're pushing the boundaries a little bit, because you're seeing it filter through some of your maybe older, more established distilleries too, like Glengarry, for example. We're experimenting with a lot of these things too, which is really, really fun to be part of. So.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference between being a custodian of a brand and being a creator of a spirit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. But I mean, being a custodian of a brand doesn't mean that you have to remain status quo. I mean, I really like what Suntory have been doing with their distilleries. I mean, not least your neighbor, Glengarry, going back to floor malting, going back to direct fire wash still. Absolutely brilliant. And they've increased the number of washbacks at all their distilleries, not to increase their capacity, but to prolong the fermentation time at Beaumont, at Lafroig, and the others. And to see a giant like Suntory do that. So it's not just the small new distilleries going back to the future. You have a giant like Suntory doing this with all the 6 distilleries, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, definitely. Really exciting to see what they're up to.
I just
I'm
love
biased.
Kat's really trying not to go into smug mode here.
Yeah, well, what can I say? It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun as well, though. It's fun. And we've got so much chat and comments coming in, and we better look to make sure we haven't missed any questions. Well, I'm obviously just enjoying chatting to you so much, but I think everyone's...
While you're looking, I was going to jump onto Major Nut, who says on YouTube, in the beginning of this year, he suffered from serious FOMO. It's calmed down now, and he's noticed that it's more fun finding bottles than chasing what's popular. I think that's a great...
That's a nice way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, just find a bottle, go to your local shop or go to your bar and have a couple of tasters of things that you might not normally go for and discover that way, rather than such and such put a review out and said this is a really good bottle, so everyone wants to buy it. And that's the other thing about, sorry to jump back into this kind of topic. A lot of the time you're making your purchases based on somebody else's opinion or somebody else's review, which has made that whiskey popular, and it might not be down your street at all. So discover for yourself. I love going into a bar, and something I always try and do if I'm in a new bar and I'm not sure what I want to drink is look for the Glenfiddich and go for 2 bottles to the left, and whatever that is, that's where I'm starting. And make sure you've got a different dram every time.
That's good.
Because every bar's got a Glenfiddich in it.
Yeah.
I was just looking further back up the questions as well to make sure we covered everybody. Scott had asked, way up, can we ask if newer distilleries will ever get a full page, as it seems a shame, as some like Ardnamurchan and Rassay and Glasgow are really popular?
Yeah, that's always a problem with getting full page or a half page or a spread in the yearbook. Thing is, I decided to restrict it to 300 pages for because that means it will weigh around 470 grams, and due to postage, if I were to increase it with 24 pages, that would be double the postage. So I decided actually early on that Kilhoma would be the last distillery to get a full page. Every distillery, big or small, after that will be in the new distillery chapter, which doesn't make sense because I know we have Daphne there, and Francis, he's been on me for the past 20 years and saying, but I opened just 3 weeks after Kilhoman. Yeah, I'm sorry, but so yeah, he's a nice chap. I love his whiskies, but so we will have all these distilleries in the new distillers chapter that have been releasing whiskies for the past 10, 15 years. And some of them are big, also Bay, 12 million liters. Some of them are small, 12,000 liters. But for these reasons, that I don't want to grow the book into something quite quick and difficult to handle, especially in terms of distribution, I needed to make that decision that everyone after 2005, Kilhoman, not Daphne, they get half page. Kat, you don't have the latest release. Mike, maybe you've seen that. I did something with micro distilleries.
Yeah. Berto Benny and the Cabrach and these kind of guys are in there, aren't they?
Oh, I saw you at the Cabrach. I saw on your Instagram you went over.
Okay. Yeah, because with micro distilleries, I decided that I needed, for the ones who are doing 12, 15, 20,000 liters a year, however interesting they may be or great whiskies they're making, is it fair to give them a half page when I can only give a half page to, for instance, Art American, are doing so
Yeah.
many new releases. Things are happening all the time. So that was one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they got a sixth of a page.
I mean,
I
I
don't know.
guess it'd be like the family Bible. If you give a full page to every bloody distillery, it'd be like something like a tome like you see in a church. People wouldn't get it home.
I know.
I would need a bigger handbag.
Yeah,
I have to.
you're
I
right,
have to
Kat.
show this
I
picture
mean,
here. It's in the book. This is a stunning picture of Aurora
Is that
Distillery.
Northern Lights? Wow.
that's
Yeah.
Aurora in Norway. Yeah.
I just have to point this out because Tor Peter has just put a wee comment on Facebook saying it's super cool that also the large players dare to experiment. So Tor is the distiller and owner of the Aurora Distillery. So there's a wee shout out.
Very cool distillery, absolutely. I met
Yeah.
quite a few of the guys who work there and doing great stuff. The world's most northerly
Yes,
malt whiskey distillery, absolutely.
in the Arctic Circle, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
We're actually away to get the newest release from them in the shop in the next couple of days.
Right.
Yggdrasil, I think. I'm going to pronounce that absolutely terribly, but
Yggdrasil, yeah.
Yggdrasil. Yeah, there we go. There we go. That's the Scandinavian twang.
That's a
it sound
Viking thing,
nicer.
yeah.
Well
So,
done
yeah,
for giving it a go. That was brave.
it was someone. Yeah, that was it. I knew Ingvar would help me out there. I was going to. Alan Smith has been on again. He's said tomorrow is the English Online Whisky Awards. What do you think of some of the experimentation down south of our border?
We're thinking about the English distilleries now.
Yeah, not the English in general. But the whiskey would be cool.
No, but I mean that's absolutely amazing. I mean, when I did the 2006 book, and I'm not even sure they had started yet, or if they entered in the 2007. I'm talking about English distillery in Norfolk, St. George's, as it was called back then. And now we have 45 or 50, I don't know. And some of them I think are absolutely amazing. I do enjoy Lakes, for instance, and their quite classic approach with doing lots of sherry maturations. Probably not least thanks to Davar Gandhi coming from Macallan and being master blender there for a few years before he moved on. One of my favorites right now is Spirit of Yorkshire and Friday Bay. And we were talking earlier about wood finishes. And I think what they're doing with the ale maturations, ale cask maturations and or finishes and stout. I mean, and of course they have a brewery of their own, so it's quite easy for them to play around with things like that. I think it's fantastic. So lots of good things to find there, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know I still haven't branched out into English whiskey yet. I keep meaning to, but you don't really see it on the go up here very much, I suppose.
We tried it. We took in the Lakes and we tried the English Whiskey Company, the Norfolk guys. Yeah, it's a hard sell up in the northeast of Scotland.
Or maybe not the sort of market.
Yeah, the locals are very loyal, and the tourists don't want to come to Scotland to buy English whiskey. So there's the two biggest reasons that
I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, world whiskey in general is a very small. I would say less than 5% of everything we have is a world whiskey. We have a small bourbon collection. We have some Scandinavian, but the Bifrost, the Aurora distillery does very well for us, and we do try and get these guys in. It's just finding that niche that's interesting enough that people will try it, and we all know the the Scotland England thing is a lot of it's playful fun, but when it comes to buying a whiskey, I think
It's dead serious.
the mark a little bit for a lot of the guys out there.
When it comes to Aberdeenshire folk, we've all got like really short arms and really long pockets. If we're going to spend 50, 45, 50 pounds, it's probably not going to be first choice. It's going to be an English whiskey, I'd imagine. But yeah, no, I need to try some. I've got no experience of it at all. Did an English whiskey not win World Whiskey last year? The Whiskey Magazine, was it Whiskey Magazine? Who was it? There's so many awards, I kind of lose track of what they're called and who does what. But I'm sure an English whiskey did well last year.
I think
I never keep track of the awards. I mean, I know the producers like it, and a lot of consumers like to see some kind of awards on the label.
Was it at the Friday Day? These guys,
yeah, maybe. I know there's so many different awards out there. I can't keep up with them all.
I mean, maybe if they made all their whiskey in bottles this size, it might sell better in Scotland. I'm not sure.
Do you think miniatures are going to last forever? Because so Christmas time they're so popular. I remember this from the shop, Mike. Like
that'll last about 20 minutes, really, not forever.
I don't mean your bottle in particular, but I know that with like sustainability and like the fact that miniatures are so expensive in comparison to producing standard 70cl bottles, I just wonder like if distilleries are just going to stop doing them or not, because you're not making a lot of money out of them. But
no, you're right. I think a lot of the producers have stopped doing them. Those two reasons. I mean, sustainability, and it's bloody expensive to do it. And
I know. I wonder if they'll just gradually die out and people will have to put something else in their homemade Christmas crackers, because it's pretty much what people buy them for. I think you go on the days when people used to collect them. It used to be a thing, wasn't it? But I don't think they do that anymore.
But then again, I mean, if you have miniatures in your visitor center, at least your customers will be walking away with something. If they don't want 70cl or 50cl,
especially with Brexit and restrictions and what you can travel with, miniatures are handy for that at least. Bloody Brexit. Well, that's a chat for another night. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think Hollywood would be able to do miniatures. Can you imagine that for every one they release, they have to release miniatures as well? They'd never keep up. It'd be impossible.
Yeah. No, miniatures are great for, let's say, for Christmas, for gifts, for travel. I think there is a place for them. It's just unfortunately the cost, isn't it, of producing a miniature. Mm-hmm. You're looking at the guts of £10 sometimes for a what's regarded as a pub double. When you can buy for 4 times that, you'll get 14 times the liquid.
Yeah.
We'll see. I love a miniature. Great way of trying out new whiskey.
I think it is. Yeah. I mean, the only other way is, of course, if you end up at a whiskey show, and I know you have a lot of them in the UK. We have 15, 20 in Sweden. That's a perfect way of trying a dram and see if you want to buy it, or join a whiskey club. Also a perfect way. End up at tastings and see, will I buy this? Because I completely understand if you're reluctant to buy a bottle for, 60, 70 pounds, and you haven't even tried it before.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It is. Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they'll die out, but I don't suppose new distilleries will maybe release them as much as their more established ones. I need to ask you. Oh no, sorry, Mike. I didn't know you were making that point.
I was going to say, just to kind of finish with the minutes, it depends on your production as well. If you're producing, you look at somebody like Glenfiddich, who's probably producing millions of miniatures a year. The cost per unit comes way down, and it's so much more economic for them than, like a Holyrood or even somebody like, I don't know, who's kind of like an American. Mm-hmm. It's probably, they do their own gift sets, but they know that each gift set is a guaranteed 4 sales. Yeah. So they can kind of produce that to a scale.
And they probably do it for airlines as well. I mean, it's. Well,
I was going to ask anyway before we lose you for the night, because I'm aware we're like a good half hour in, a good hour and a half into it. So I'm intrigued by the whole Keeper of the Quaich thing. I like to think it's some sort of secret society where you all kind of meet up underneath maybe like a hollowed out Monroe and sort of drink whiskey out of quaichs in velvet jackets next to a big fireplace. Is it like that?
We don't have any death skulls or stuff like that. It's not a Freemason thing. No. Far from it. Far from it.
Like a secret handshake.
No,
No
none of
secret
that.
handshake.
None of that. Yeah.
So you were what's the word? You were kind of inducted into as a Keeper of the Quaich in 20.
I was inducted 8 years ago. That's right.
Yeah. So what's so what do you do? Like, is it like I need to know more. Like, what do you do? Have like dinners? Do you like, I don't know, get like a quaich to keep? Do you have like?
Yeah, you get a small quaich. Thing is, I've only been there once at Black Castle when I was inducted. If you want to come back, you're of course welcome. There are 2 inductions every year, spring and autumn. Thing is, I mean, there's a restricted number of places where I mean, you can't have 5,000 people there or whatever. But I remember when I was inducted by Martin Markvartsen, you know Martin, brand ambassador for Highland Park. So
Yes.
Edrington, you need a sponsor. You need a sponsor. So all the big companies, Edrington, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Wat Mackay, Grants, etc., they are a part of the keepers. So you need a sponsor, and Edrington was my sponsor. And Martin, he called me up and said, we're considering keepering you. And great honor, absolutely. So the thing is, you have to choose between either wearing a kilt or black tie. And I'm from Sweden. I know a lot of Swedes, they have their kilts. To me, it's kind of like a Japanese Nobel laureate in literature coming from Tokyo to Stockholm to receive the prize, dressed in a Swedish folk costume with clogs. So I couldn't see myself coming to Black Castle in a kilt. And I didn't own black tie. I prefer jeans. So I had to rent it. And I was a bit nervous because I'm not comfortable at big gatherings like this. But the turning point was when the 25 of us who were being keeper at that evening, we were gathered in one room, and then all the other people were in another room, and we called in alphabetically by our last name, and Ron being my last name. I was one of the last. And they called me in, and when I walked up, and they read out why I was being keeper, what I had did for Scotch whiskey, that turned the whole thing around. That was a grand moment. And at that time, I've been doing the book for 12 years, I think. Then you relax. It's a great party. You're dancing on the tables. It's really relaxed. and you have everything. You have the whiskey.
I'm glad you didn't have the kilt on if you're dancing on the tables. That's
There's nothing secret about it whatsoever. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful people who are sharing one passion, that's Scotch. So yeah.
It sounds amazing. I've always been intrigued by it. Just because you hear, you just know it's a significant title, but I never really knew like what happened afterwards. I knew you got inducted and it was like a beautiful ceremony, but I was like, then what? Like, do you get like, is there a WhatsApp group or like,
You just drink a lot of whiskey, you sing, and I mean, it's really relaxed. So yeah.
It's awesome. It's fantastic that there's that there, obviously, to recognize people's achievements, because people like you and everybody else that's been inducted, it's your day job. You're just doing it because it's your passion. You're doing it because, it's what you want to do. But there's more to it. We all recognize that what you've done in particular is you've created this amazing tool that we're all using. So yeah, it's fantastic that you get that moment to be appreciated for your contribution.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At the same time, I'm also very, very aware of one thing. I'm not making whiskey. I'm writing about it. And there are so many people in Scotland who are the whiskey makers. And I know so many people in Scotland who have been making whiskey for 30, 40 years. They haven't been keepered. And I realize that keepers of the quaich, they need to have some kind of mix of writers, producers, people who work with logistics, or an accountant or whatever. But to me, to be honest, it's quite humbling that I could become a keeper, because, as I said, I know so many people who are making the stuff that we adore.
Yeah.
That should,
I like that.
That should have been keeper long before I was.
I do like that idea of the fact that you don't have to be a whiskey maker, or you don't have to be an industry professional. The kind of key parts of it is that you promote whiskey, and you celebrate whiskey, and you open it up to other people, and you've had an influence on the industry in some way, and that could be from writing about it, from doing reviews. I know Michael Lord got keepered as for having the Duffton whiskey shop and being part of the Spirit of Speyside Festival, and you don't have to be there making the whiskey. You could be. I mean, if that was
about whiskey, absolutely, I agree. Yeah,
it's all about celebrating whiskey, isn't it? And
yeah,
and that does open it up to so many people who are there to be, could get kind of put forward for it, because you get voted, or you get nominated, don't you? Somebody has to nominate you.
Yeah, nominated. Yeah, right.
Write a report on why they think you should be inducted in, and then it goes to a panel, and they kind of decide. There's a whole process behind it.
Do you know, if anybody wants to nominate me, I'm quite happy to help with that, information gathering. I'm available.
I'm not sure if touting yourself to be a keeper is
No, fair enough. It's very cool, though. There's some fantastic. One more question. Do you all get like a portrait made of yourself to hang up in a hall of like past keepers? Because that would also be awesome.
No, nothing like that.
I feel like I should be organising the Keepers of the Quaich, because I've got some great ideas about how to make this better.
I don't think even the next step is a master of the quaich, and quite a few of them, just I think around 200, and the masters are selected. Those have been keepers for 10, 15 years, and they are selected by the committee of the keepers. And I don't think even they have their portraits hanging in the Horse Black Castle. I haven't seen them.
Then what's the point? If you're not getting a portrait done,
You don't even get a portrait.
Well, do you know what? It's fine. Yeah, I don't need a nomination then. Everyone's just saying that I just like the idea of dancing on the table. I'm not going to lie, that would be part of the reason I turned up. But, I'd expect at least a fanfare or a portrait afterwards. But no, it sounds like an amazing thing to be part of. It's very cool. I've always been intrigued by it. Well, Mike, when the Blether becomes like global, and we're recognised as the face of the whiskey industry, we might we might get our moment.
You never know. So what's, Ingvar, you've done 20 years. Where do you see the next 20 years in a positive light? We've talked about potential locks and potential closures. In terms of whiskey production and in terms of where it is now, where do you think it can go? Can it get to, as Kat mentioned earlier on, can it get to the moon?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a very tough one.
Well, let's narrow down in terms of the yearbook. What do you have planned for the next few years? Are you quite settled in the format that it is? I know you like to keep it 300 pages, and you've got your half pages for new distilleries.
Actually, I still like the format. I like opening it up with these articles and then doing the different distillery chapters. And so I'm going to keep the format. Someone asked me, I mean, when are you going to stop? You've been doing 20 years now. And usually I said that because my wife is 7 years younger than I am, and usually in Sweden you retire when you're 65. I'm 67 now, so if I retire, I do my 25th yearbook when I'm 72. My wife retires at 65. Great plan, we can retire together. Thing is, when I mentioned that for the first time when my wife was present, she said, "What gave you the idea that I want to retire at 65? You didn't ask me." "No, I didn't. I didn't ask you." So I realized that maybe I would have to carry on and do 30 yearbooks. I don't know. So my plan went down the drain. Anyway, as long as it sells, and it's still selling, and as long as it's so much happening in the whiskey industry, I'll keep on doing it. Absolutely. So maybe another 10 years. I don't know.
And we will keep
we'll
on buying
all
it.
still be buying it for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It could be. Have you done any other
Heading over to the shop.
publishing? Sorry. Have you published any other books that the whiskey guys would be able to get their hands on?
I've done a few for the Swedish market. A few of them not as geeky as, I mean, we have to agree that the yearbook is quite geeky. Lots of numbers and stuff.
100%.
Thank you. So I've done quite a few books, 7 or 8, for the Swedish market, more for broader market, talking about world whiskey, talking about Scotch whiskey, and a few of them have been translated into Dutch or German. None of them into English, I'm sorry to say. I have a feeling that when it comes to the English publishers, they prefer a British author. So I haven't seen those books in English. Anyway, so I've done a couple of books about birds. Actually, okay. I did 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I did Rare Birds Yearbook. A similar format to Malt Whisky Yearbook. Birds is another interest of mine. So a friend of mine and we did this portraying the most endangered bird species in the world, 285. We did that for 2 years. And by selling that book, we sponsored, what's the name in the UK, Birds of Britain or wherever.
The RSPB.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So every book sold gave £2 to the organization. And we did that for 2 years. It wasn't a big sell. It was great fun doing it, but I couldn't make a living out of it.
That must be... Is it easier to get information out of a bird than it is getting information out of somebody at Shivas?
Yeah, very good point. I'd rather interview an owl than someone from Shivas. Thank you.
You must absolutely love Isla then.
Sorry?
You must love Isla.
For
the birds and the whiskey.
Yeah. Thing is, when I go on my trips to Scotland, I rarely have time to do anything else but visit distillers. I would love to come to Isla in the autumn and see all the birds and just take 10 days off and not visit any distillery, just bird watching. Absolutely. Yeah. I must do that.
I would
they
say
are
that
amazing.
would be impossible.
To not go to the distillery.
No,
Buy that for 10 days and not go to a distillery.
yeah, sounds like a good plan in theory, but absolutely impossible. Wouldn't work out.
But no, I love that how you've got that kind of side interest in birds, and so much so that you've written books about them as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It would all be geese anyway. If you went out to Isla, it would just be geese. There's loads of geese on the west coast. Like they love it
There's
out
a
there.
lot
It's
of geese on Isla in the autumn. Yeah, there are a few other birds, but yeah, lots of geese. And I guess within 2 days I would get tired, and I would go to the distillery after all.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's only so many geese you can look at in a day. When I was
Yeah.
when I was living on the west coast, I lived in a really small island off the southwest coast of Scotland. Obviously, we'd get the same volume of geese. And my youngest son, how old would he have been at the time? Like toddler, so like I don't know, talking. It's terrible. I can't remember the stages my kids were at, but like yeah, small and talking. But he was convinced that the geese were penguins. He'd get so excited. Because we used to do like a lot of bird watching. Because I always had my little book, and we would like look out the window, and we had to go up and we had to walk up to them just to check to see if they weren't penguins. But then my father had come over from New Zealand to visit, and he'd taken like a cuddly toy of a kiwi. So he loved this cuddly toy, and then we saw a corncrake. So a corncrake used to be in our garden, and they're quite loud, but very cute little birds. So of course they look a little bit like a kiwi. So he was then convinced we had a kiwi in the garden, which made a bit more sense than penguins.
Yeah, 10,000 flying penguins over Isla. That's odd. That's really odd.
And that was the leaves on the geese that made them look like penguins, wasn't it?
That's my accent.
I'd say you had a corncrake in the garden.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, a corncrake in Sweden is a really, really rare bird.
Yeah, so that's the only time I've lived all around Scotland, so I've been lucky to see quite a few of the more rare birds, but this is the only time I've ever seen and heard a corncrake, and it was there for 2 years in a row, and then it didn't come back the third year. So which was a bit of a concern, because it was like, this must have been where it was coming for breeding and things, but I didn't know what it was to begin with. It was the laird. He was really into nature and things, and he told, because it's a really distinctive call they make, and he told me what it was. So yeah, luckily enough I spotted it. Very shy bird.
Was it actually breeding in the garden, or probably breeding in a field nearby? Or?
Yes, my garden, it was just at the farm, so my garden was kind of adjacent to like a sort of it was the ram field where the ram, I wouldn't say tops because it's a Scottish word, so I was trying to make my brain figure out what the real word was. So it was just hiding in the long grass between our kind of dry steam dike and the start of the field.
Right.
The corncrakes are they're part of the grouse family, aren't they? Corncrake there.
Yeah, I can say that. So I guess the third year when you didn't see it, it probably ended up in a binder in the field. That's what happens.
It was never. I mean, that field was never cut like that, but it was only ever. It was just like a little wee kind of. It was a tiny little field, but yeah, maybe something.
You keep telling yourself that, Kat.
It could have been. Well, we didn't have foxes on the island, but it could have been. I don't know. Maybe somebody's pet cat or something. You never know, because they're little.
Yeah. Okay.
But there, interesting stuff. Nice little segue into birds there for everybody.
It seems to be we're losing the audience now because we're talking about birds.
Well, we usually do start losing the audience for the Aquavitae chat, because that must start at is it 9 o'clock it starts, Mike?
No, it's 9:45.
Oh, they're quite late.
Yeah, they'll be going on till midnight. But yeah, Ingvar, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us tonight. It's been great fun. And I always love chatting to people who aren't brand orientated or haven't got a vested interest in in a particular brand, because it means that we can talk about absolutely anything with complete openness. And the only thing, I'm just going to do one last plug. It is I think it was Alan Smith who's watching, who said it's a must ought to be on the shelf for any whiskey fan, and I absolutely agree with that. So, guys, I'm not urging you to buy it from me. It would be nice, but get your hands on this. Online bookshops, whiskey retailers, distilleries even will have this on their shelves. So make sure you grab yourself a copy of it. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming along. And we even got a little bit of birds in there and a little bit of.
It's been an absolute pleasure to be here and chatting with you. Great couple of hours, absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's been, and you're welcome. You're welcome whenever. You're indoctrinated into the Blether Society, which is better than Keeper the Quaich. So, and we'll get a portrait. We'll get a portrait done. So you're welcome back whenever you like.
Thank you. I would love to come back. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
Thanks, Ingvar. Just before you go, Kat, can we ask who's on next week?
We can. So next week we've got Rosalind Erskine, who is editor, Scotsman Food and Drink, and writer and host of the Scran podcast. So excited to chat to her.
Awesome. So that's going to be foodie and drinky orientated.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mainly focusing on the drink, but maybe have some nice fun pairing chat, which I always like. Whiskey and food pairings are always good fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Once again, Ingvar, thanks for giving up your time tonight to come and chat. Always a pleasure. That's twice you've been on, so you're now inducted, as Kat said, into the Blether Hall of Fame.
Means a lot to me. Count on that.
And we don't care if you wear a kilt or not, because we only ever see the chest up. So whatever you like.
I won't get up now.
You won't be dancing on the table tonight. So yeah, to everyone at home, thanks once again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Slanjava. Enjoy your whiskey weekends.
See you next week. Night.